to let the debate proceed and the vote take place in due course.
Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Pleased to take a call on the third reading of the Game Animal Council Bill. When this bill was introduced, Forest and Bird described it as a political trophy awarded to Peter Dunn for his loyalty to the government, and it's certainly a very fine trophy, and if it was a deer head it would have a lot of antlers, a lot of points on the antlers. But it has been a very controversial bill. There were more than 600 submissions on it, and it was opposed by the major conservation and environment groups, conservation agencies, New Zealand Conservation Authority, a lot of the conservation boards and regional councils and Auckland Council. So, Mr Speaker, we're getting to the final stages, and we in the Green Party still believe that the Game Animal Council is being established for all the wrong reasons and in the wrong way. And as a standalone council which is promoting the interests of hunting, it's putting that recreation in a very privileged position in relation to all other users of conservation land. Trampers, mountain bikers, kayakers and other users don't have their own special legislation which gives them special access to the Minister, which gives them government funding, the ability to recommend that fees be set. So essentially, this is establishing a glorified lobby group for hunters, which is going to be funded by the Crown and by Kiwi hunters. And one of the tragedies of the bill is that it overlooks the opportunity provided by conservation boards, which are a diverse group of iwi representatives, recreational representatives, farmers, hunters, conservationists and others that advise the department. They provide a collective advice from a range of different points of view, and we heard in Select Committee how boards like the Tongariro Taupo one are working with hunters to give them more influence on the management of conservation land. So conservation boards are an integrating body. The Game Animal Council, as a standalone one, is likely to exacerbate the conflict between conservation values and hunting. We don't think the bill is needed because it essentially duplicates the work of some other agencies. In the firearms and hunting safety area, it's duplicating the work of the New Zealand Deerstalkers Association and the Mountain Safety Council. We don't think it's needed because we already have recreational hunting areas under the Wild Animal Control Act, and they cover nearly 190,000 hectares of New Zealand. We already have liaison committees, such as the TAR one, under the TAR Control Plan. And we already have a number of successful examples from the hunters' perspective of where herds that they see as being nationally significant are managed on conservation land with input from hunters. Both Maggie Barry and Nikki Wagner talked about the Wapiti Foundation and its work in Fiordland. And Wapiti in Fiordland National Park are managed by the Wapiti Foundation and the Department of Conservation through provisions in the Fiordland National Park Management Plan, which recognises both the interests of hunters and biodiversity values. Similarly, with the whitetail population on Rakiura Stewart Island, that's very popular with hunters. It's managed under the provisions of the Rakiura National Park Management Plan, but in consultation with hunters. So in both these areas, hunting management operates well and to the satisfaction of the hunters concerned, as the many submitters made clear in their submissions to the Select Committee, so we don't need this bill. And as the Southland Conservation Board noted in its submission, and it's had experience obviously with both the Wapiti management and with the whitetail management, the fact of the bill risks undermining the existing goodwill which has built up between DOC and hunters, and it could well overwhelm these local initiatives where you've got a centralised agency like the Game Animal Council being established, and because of our concern that will primarily promote the interests of trophy hunters and commercial guides rather than the average recreational hunter. And that's potentially likely to happen because we've got an 11-member council, it's got to fund its activities, and it's going to be very keen to supplement its income that it gets from the export the export of trophies, so it will want to collect fees. And if it's going to be collecting fees, there's nothing in the Act that requires those fees to be set at a reasonable level. But our primary reason for opposing the bill is because it cuts right across the Department of Conservation's statutory responsibilities to protect and preserve our Indigenous plants and wildlife and the landscapes that they inhabit. Now, the Honourable Mr Dunn was saying that that is just our concern. It was a concern that came through in a range of submissions, including from organisations like the Auckland Council. And it's a real concern because of the significant powers that the bill gives to the Game Animal Council in relation to the management of herds of special interest. And even this term, it makes a pest animal, deer, tar, feral pigs, they're a problem animal. It turns them into being seen as an asset. And it's very unlikely that the Game Animal Council, when it's managing these herds, will want to permanently reduce their numbers, contract their range, or eradicate them. And of course, that undermines a strong commitment to management of these species as pests because of their browsing impacts on Indigenous vegetation, because of their contribution to soil erosion in high country lands. So their desire to maximise hunting opportunities will cut across and conflict with the need to control and cull these browsers. And there's nothing in this bill about promoting and achieving better outcomes for tourism, for better pest control, for bovine TB management, or even better results for conservation. And that's why we've got this concern about the undermining of DOC's statutory purpose. And as the Auckland Council said, the likely results of the bill will be far worse for conservation. And was very disappointed in the committee stages that the government did not support the SOP in my name to make national parks and other high status protected areas off limits to the establishment of herds of special interest, because there is a parallel provision to the one that was in the SOP in the Wild Animal Control Act, which prevents the establishment of recreational hunting areas in national parks. So why, if the government believed, and if Mr Dunn believed, that this bill wouldn't undermine conservation values, wouldn't undermine the protection of our Indigenous biodiversity, why didn't they support a parallel provision which would have put national parks off limits to these herds of special interest? And members from the National Party have said that this bill, in establishing the Game Animal Council, replicates or is similar to the Fish and Game Council. Would point out that the management of Canada geese was taken away from Fish and Game because they were seen as having a conflict in both managing Canada geese for hunting and also the concern that farmers had with increase in Canada geese numbers and their browsing impacts on farmland. So Fish and Game no longer manages a species where they've got that conflict of interest. Similarly here, you will have the Game Animal Council managing species which have impacts as pests. So that's an internal tension which isn't good for biodiversity. And the final reason we're opposing it is still because of those changes in the SOP which take out the reference to recreational hunting as a management purpose for the herds of special interest. And that, we believe, will mean that the council will be dominated by an elite group of trophy hunters, safari park operators and commercial guides, and we won't see the traditional Kiwi sport of hunting promoted.
Andrew Williams.